Hello and welcome to week 16 of Real Time Recorded. I'm with Zeus. Hello, Zeus.
Hello,
How are
Dave.
you?
How you been?
I'm doing well, thank you. We got three stories as usual this week. Let's start off with the Zoom fund, or what I call Z-Bucks. It's the new kind of Z-Bucks, not the kind that your ex-wife is spending, but the Z-Bucks. I think it's pretty clever program that Zoom has announced. It's a new fund to invest in building up their ecosystem. They said that they would pay $250,000 to $2.5 million to various startups that build new ways for its users to meet, communicate, and collaborate. I got basically four thoughts on this one. I think one, it's really smart. It stimulates the ecosystem. I'm glad to see this happening. Secondly, it creates fodder for acquisitions. And I think this is a really important part of this formula. We've seen companies like Cisco and RingCentral and Slack invest in a lot of companies they end up acquiring. And so I think it's a really interesting way to kind of guide a startup to favor your platform. And number three, it expands the formula of call, meet, and chat, something that Microsoft and Cisco have also been working at. And then lastly, it's a smart thing to do while your valuation is high, your cash is up. It's really building the future, and it's a nice thing to be able to do. And I'm glad to see Zoom doing this. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, well, I am glad to see the name Z-Bucks there because, as you mentioned, I'm all out of Z-Bucks now. So we'll see when those come back. But I think from Zoom, there's a much bigger story here afoot, and I think that is we have talked about this trend over and over of communication shifting from product to platform, right? We're all using these tools now, and the key though for the vendors that are going to be successful is how do you build your capabilities into other experiences. And if you look at historically at the application space, all the application vendors that have become big, I'm not talking a couple of billion, I'm talking tens of billion, right? These are the Cisco's, the Microsofts, the Oracles, the SAPs, the Salesforces. They all have big developer ecosystems around them. In fact, their value is largely driven by developers, not the company. And I think for a Zoom, they kicked off Z Apps last year, and I think they're pretty proud of the fact that they got 1,300 application partners now. I was talking to somebody from Zoom about that, and I said, honestly, 1,300, whoop-de-doo. That's a very small number. It's certainly impressive for under 2 years, don't get me wrong. But when you think about what makes big software companies big, it is being driven by that large software ecosystem, and I think this is another step in the road there. And I also think that this is an area that the application industry hasn't really given a lot of credence to. And even Microsoft, who is a developer-focused company, frankly has done a pretty poor job of fostering a software ecosystem around Teams. Does a great job with Office, does a great job with Windows and stuff, but in this area, they've surprisingly been lacking. And so I think Zoom's got a good chance of really gathering some momentum here and differentiating themselves this way. I also think that this is a precursor to what we might see. I wrote something on No Jitter about the whole concept of low code, no code, and I think you'll see them get into that space so they can appeal more to the line of business manager. But for Zoom, they've made a lot of noise about Zoom Phone, and there's been questions about Contact Center. I actually think what they're doing on the application side could fuel bigger, faster growth than anything they're doing on the product side. And so I'm really happy to see them do that, and I think it shows good thought leadership and good vision.
So also this week, RingCentral announced some enhancements, mostly to its video platform, but to its messaging platform as well. They did some great stuff. They released virtual backgrounds. It's a dumb feature in my opinion, but everyone loves it, so great. I'm glad to see that they did that. They announced what they call overlay, what everyone else calls immersive share. We've seen this recently from Cisco and Avaya. It's an obvious feature, really, because it combines the virtual background feature, which they just enabled, with content share. So I think it's a really nice way of presenting your content in a meeting. They also announced breakout rooms, which has been a hugely popular feature. They introduced a feature called Picture-in-Picture, which is a misleading name. I think Dr. Evil would call it Mini U. It's really like more for your mobile application. It allows you to see the content share and make the video piece really small and move it around, which is nice. And They also enabled messaging export, which is a interesting concept to a lot of companies. I think it's a great concept and a really important feature. So, your thoughts on RingCentral
Yeah, they had a
enhancements?
couple more. I think one of the areas where they weren't all that strong is on the messaging side, and clearly, we've talked about with Salesforce acquiring Slack, how messaging is becoming a much more important feature of these collaboration tools. You need to be strong in messaging. So they added a feature called personal folders, which is kind of cool because everybody thinks of messaging as being a team tool, but there's still a personal aspect to it. So this enables users to group together relevant teams and conversations by creating individual folders and that they can use to improve just organizational content. And I think I have talked to users that do get lost in the myriad of folders that they have, and so that's a good enhancement. Another one that I liked was the external guest controls. Guest access is still something that's very difficult to do. Some companies do it better than others.
Yep.
I think when you look at the way Teams handles it, they have a lot of problems, with user rights and things like that. So I think this is a good feature to have because it allows the admin to have more ability over what guests can do and what they can't do. They also created a mobile app resource center, and they didn't give a lot of details on what that is, but clearly this industry is moving mobile first, right? Like most are. We're working from home now, and I think for Ring, more to start thinking about how they shift their product from being desktop first to mobile first is certainly a good thing. So a lot of those features I looked at, Dave, is catch up, but there's certainly necessary features, almost table stakes features if you're going to play in this game. But Ring's certainly got a massive install base, and I think this will help them, shift a lot of those users from calling to messaging as well.
Okay, for our third story, we're going to talk about Apple's announcements this week, and not really enterprise communications related, but there's a few overlaps I thought we'll touch on. So for me, the most interesting thing was the making the 1080p camera standard on their new iMacs. Now, they actually started rolling out 1080p cameras on desktops last year, but they're doubling down on this. They're making it available on all their new desktops. I think this is really important, and it's surprising to me how hard it is to find 1080p built-in webcams on laptops, including MacBooks, including Windows devices, including Chromebooks. So I think that's great, and glad to see the bar being raised on that, particularly after 2020. It's kind of an obvious thing to do. Personally, I'm not too excited about the new iPad Pro. There was a lot of excitement about the M1 chip, but the problem with me as a desktop replacement is it doesn't run the real Chrome. I require a lot of plugins in my workflow, so I'm going to stick with my Chromebook when I travel. I guess those are my thoughts on the Apple news. Zeus, did anything stand out for you? And you're an Apple guy, actually, come to think of it. So are you going to trade your MacBook Pro for the new iPad Pro?
Well, I am an Apple guy, and I hate myself for it because whenever I think of Apple guys, I think of those people that line up outside the store the night before something's released. But I am on a MacBook right now. I do have my iPhone here. See, I also have my iPad Pro here. So I have one of each, actually. And they're for different use cases. I use the iPad Pro when I want to look at a lot of content. It's not a great, even though it's got a keyboard and stuff now in the case, it's not a great content creation device. I do think...
But now that the new MacBooks support iOS, why not just use that?
Well, because it's I like Mac OS better. I do think, and Microsoft made this mistake years ago when they were trying to get into the mobile space. They put Windows Mobile, which looked like the desktop mobile on their phone. One's meant for mouse and keyboard, one's meant for touch. And because of that, I think you need to keep the OSs separate. And I think Apple, they're doing that, and I think they understand that. One of the features you didn't touch on, though, in the iPad Pro, which is actually kind of cool, is Center Stage, where they showed a demo of it where you can walk around a room and the camera will recenter on you. And that's a device that you see in some pretty high-end devices, or a feature you see in high-end devices. And so
you're also seeing that in a lot of consumer devices. Facebook Portal's got that, and so does the Echo Show.
So that's becoming a pretty standard device. And so you could, in theory, start using all your Apple devices as your corporate collaboration device here. So, Apple, as much as I bust on Apple all the time for being overpriced because they sell you like $1,000 monitor stands and things like that, the thing they've done really well is create this ecosystem of stuff where I can actually, even their clipboard, I can copy something into a clipboard on my phone and have it appear on my clipboard on my desktop and stuff. So it makes content manipulation very, very easy and stuff. So they understand that the device isn't really the product. It's a display for the product, and they have to look cool. but the experience is the product, and they've done a really good job of that. And I guess that's why I'm willing to pay as much as I do for all these devices. So no, I won't switch them, but I'll use them both. Well, Dave, that brings us to the end of week 16. And just for people watching this, we're actually going to be syndicated now on No Jitter. They've been looking to get into video, and I guess we're part of that beta program, Dave. So I'm very excited about that all our content now will be showing up there. So look for a short write-up there. And on behalf of my compadre, Dave Michaels, I'm Zeus Caravallis. See you next week on Real Time Report.